The coronavirus pandemic has shut down cities and slowed business to a crawl. So it comes as no surprise that an extraordinary meeting of the leaders of the world's 20 largest economies would be convened. But they didn't meet face to face. Instead, they spoke via video link and pledged to do all they can to fight the outbreak.
Now is a crucial moment, a time for us to rise up, to challenge and act with swiftness. I'm convinced that through solidarity and mutual assistance, we will prevail over this outbreak.
Collectively, G20 governments have injected $5 trillion into the global economy. In a joint statement issued after the virtual meeting, they pledged to work with international institutions like the World Health Organization and the World Bank. Their finance ministers and central banks also plan to coordinate their policies for a faster and more sustainable economic recovery. Some analysts say support from China has been crucial for many countries that are among the worst affected by the disease.
After the controlling the pandemic crisis in China, so that also China helped some other countries facing the difficulties because of the coronavirus pandemic in their countries, like Italy, South Asian countries and Southeast Asian countries, and in some European countries also. These Chinese experience is very important in that manner. Chinese President Xi Jinping also shared his country's vision, learned lessons, and also offered some concrete measures to handle this health problem, pandemic crisis, but also offered some solutions for possibly negatively affected global economy in that manner.
US President Donald Trump also says his administration can learn a lot from Beijing's experience. And that's building hopes that the world's two largest economies may look past their differences and work together to control the coronavirus and revive the global economy. Paolo Montecillo, TRT World.
For more on this, Jonathan Portes joins us now from London. He's a Professor of Economics and Public Policy at King's College. He also led the UK Cabinet Office's economic analysis and policy work during the 2008 financial crisis and on the G20 London Summit in 2009. Welcome back to Money Talks, Jonathan. Now, G20 leaders are showing more unity than at any time since the 2008 financial crisis. How effective do you think this $5 trillion pledge will be?
I think we should be clear that when they say this is a coordinated response, as yet at least, it's really nothing of the sort. This $5 trillion is simply adding up what different countries have independently said they're going to do. And I don't think there's any real sense in which it's coordinated. The US fiscal response, for example, the $2 trillion or so that's in the plan that's probably going to be signed by President Trump, wasn't really coordinated with anybody else. Meanwhile, European leaders are not finding it possible to coordinate their response among themselves, let alone with the rest of the world. So I think while there were some nice words in the G20 response, the fundamental difficulties in coordinating international action, which are always there, are still there and have been overlaid by the political and economic conflicts that are going on at the moment between the EU, between China and the US. So while it might be nice to think that the threat of the virus has indeed prompted everybody to put away their differences and work well together, I'd have to see a lot more than we've seen so far to be convinced of that, to be absolutely honest.
Yes, as you mentioned, EU leaders seem to be at loggerheads over their own coordinated response to this pandemic. They've given themselves 2 more weeks to come up with a plan. But what do you think that plan should look like? And shouldn't they act sooner rather than later, given that the death tolls in countries like Spain, Italy and France are all surging?
I think that latter point is a bit unfair in that what we're talking about here, and we'll come on to that, is economic coordination and fiscal support. And that is not really an issue with respect to dealing with the immediate health concerns. European countries are already coordinating increasingly on the health response, and it's good that they're doing that. And I don't think that in any country the health response will be constrained by lack of money. There's lots of issues, but lack of money in the short term for the health response isn't one of them. So I don't think people will not die in the short term because EU leaders haven't got their act together. The real danger, though, is that their failure to coordinate quickly will send a bad signal to households, to people, to markets about how we can rebuild after this crisis. And that is very worrying. We're seeing a re-emergence of the fault lines that we saw during the last Euro crisis between countries that are looking for financial support and countries which, in particular, the Netherlands and Germany, which are very reluctant to see any element of fiscal risk sharing between countries. And I think when you are confronted, whatever we think about the rights and wrongs of the Eurozone crisis, the idea that there isn't a case for burden sharing and risk sharing, given this, what you could call a natural disaster, I think is quite wrong. And really, this is the time for Europe to step up and shape up and get its act together and come up with a common element of fiscal support for all countries.
Okay, Jonathan Portes from King's College in London, thank you as always for your analysis.